popcultpod.
Welcome to the popcultpod, broadcasting from the compound in an undisclosed location somewhere in Ireland where we're crazy for film, television and video games and much, much more. I am your cult leader and host, Tompott. Thank you for joining me and for being here. I was starting to think you wouldn't show up. I'm glad you did. I was just about to invite some friends over, put some pants on, you know. Ooh, does that imply that I would have pants off that you're here? Ooh. Don't overthink that one. I certainly didn't. Anyway, just a bit of news off the top of the show before we get into it. I'm using a new mic today, and I'm not sure how it's coming out technically. Still kind of tinkering with it. If it doesn't sound great, hopefully I'll have it sorted by next week, but it'll be listenable, hopefully. And with that, we're on to the same thing we are every week, what every good cult member should have, and that is their cool 8. Oh yeah, top 8 news stories from across the mediums. And first we're beginning with Lee Winnell news, which, because, I mean, I'm sure this will be a segment that will run as long as Kevin Hart is he hosting the Oscars, because there's 2 stories about Lee Winnell this week. If you're not aware, Lee Winnell co-created Saw with James Wan, and he's the director of last year's Upgrade, which was fantastic in my opinion. First news story, probably the bigger one, is that he is going to direct an Invisible Man remake for Universal Studios. And of course, this is not the first time Universal have tried to make the monsters relevant to a new audience. We had The Mummy, is that 2 years ago now? And we had Dracula Untold a few years before that. This whole idea of a dark universe, which now seems to be dead. I think this is officially puts the nail in the coffin of it, if anyone had held out some hope for it. No, I mean, like, the only person I can imagine holding out hope for it was Johnny Depp. But, like, they put out that embarrassing picture when The Mummy came out of Javier Bardem, Johnny Depp, Russell Crowe, and all these people that were just, like, expecting this amazing franchise, and then Mummy came out and sucked. But it sounds like they're doing what they should have done from the beginning. It sounds like they're listening, and that is because Jason Blum and Blumhouse are involved. Of course, they're better known for making cheap, successful horror films that are quite effective overall. Probably better than a lot of the stuff out there, even though there's a lot of cheap cash grab stuff in there as well. And this new initiative, the idea is that they're going to give more freedom to creators, keep the movies firmly rooted in horror. There's not going to be a restriction on tone, rating, or budget, and there's no pressure to connect it to this monsterverse or dark universe or whatever you want to call it. So that's good news. Universal, at least, they're learning their lesson. So Lee Winnell, as I said, he's a great director. He's a good upcoming talent as far as being a director in his own right. So that'll certainly get people excited. I love the Universal monsters from the old days, so let's see if they can get where they're meant to be, because they are, I guess, the original cinematic universe, really. But in other Lee Winnell news, this is why we have this incredibly popular, bound to be long-running segment, Lee Winnell news. It was announced that he's writing the Escape from New York remake, and some people might not like the idea of a remake of Escape from New York. Personally, I think it's actually fine. I think that film hasn't particularly aged well. I know that might be sacrilege to some people, but I think it's one that could actually benefit from being remade. Obviously, you won't be able to find someone as good as Kurt Russell, although, hey, give it to his son, actually. Give it to Wyatt Russell, is that his name? Give it to him. That'd be kind of cool. I mean, he's not a bad actor. And anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. He's going to write it, possibly direct it. There is some speculation and rumor that he said he has no intention of watering it down, like a lot of these kind of remakes of classic movies that just turn into a big blockbuster when it shouldn't be. Sounds like he's going to make it a bit more true to the original, so I think that's fantastic news. Hopefully it turns out well. Speaking of potential franchises or movies that they hope will become franchises, Hot Wheels, yeah, you know those little tiny cars? They want to make a movie of it, a big budget movie. Mattel and Warner Brothers have announced the development of a live action Hot Wheels movie. This is actually their second collaboration. They're working on Barbie with Margot Robbie, I mean, probably the best part of casting ever. Like, that's perfect. This isn't even the first time they try to make a Hot Wheels movie. They've been trying to make one for like 15 years now. They had Justin Lin involved. My question is the Hot Wheels brand really that interesting that it'll get people to see a movie? I mean, is it really going to push people to see it? Like, oh, I thought it was just a regular car movie, but it's a Hot Wheels movie. And I don't think it is. Like, Hot Wheels is a pretty bad name. Like, it's pretty lame sounding. It's a brand that's been going for 50 years, and it sounds like it. I think people will find the same way with Need for Speed, where people aren't just going to go see it for the sake of the name, even if it has car stunts that are realistic. Whatever the gimmick of that movie was. I didn't see it. I don't think a lot of people saw it. And, we'll see if this comes to fruition. Or maybe the Barbie movie will come out and not do well, and that could seal its fate as well. So, anyway. Speaking of a film that we've been hearing about for a long time. My transitioning is on point today. I'm going to see if I can link all my stories. Zombieland 2, which I pretty much tore into on my first episode because I thought no one wanted it and that was unnecessary. Looks like it's actually going to happen. We got a poster featuring the cast returning, and it's essentially was like those Instagram things, the 10-year challenges or whatever, where we had the original poster and the cast recreating that same pose. Of course, having aged 10 years. They also gave us a new title, official title. I heard Zombieland 2 somewhere. I don't know why. I think that might have really soured my opinion in the movie. But the official title now is Zombieland Double Tap, which is of course a reference to the original movie, which I did enjoy when it came out, for the record. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I just think I think I have something against sequels that come out too late. Anyway, back on point. Alongside the returning cast, we have Rosario Dawson, Zoe Deutsch, and Avan Yogio. Like, we're 5 episodes into this show, and you can already cut together like 2 hours of me just mispronouncing names. Sorry, Avan, if that's how I'm saying her name. So there's actually an alleged leak coming out about this. Super Bro Movies had a scoop. They said that Rosario Dawson is going to be a love interest for Woody Harrelson, and she's kind of this badass zombie slayer just like him. The start of the movie will see them holed up in the White House. Yep. After some disagreements, the group goes their separate ways, but they have to go save Abigail Breslin's character from a boy she ran away with, where they will encounter new zombies such as Homers, stupid ones, Hawkings, smart ones, and ninjas, deadly ones. Like, I try to give this movie the benefit of the doubt, I try to get on its side, but then when you hear stuff like that, it just makes it sound really bad. And maybe it'll be better in execution, but I don't know. Also, probably have noticed that they said Bill Murray is going to come back, even though he was dead, but I suppose he could be a zombie. And they also said Dan Aykroyd is going to have a cameo. So, Zombieland Double Tap is coming out if you're interested in that, or if you were interested in that about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I'm getting it this year. Yeah, because it'll be out pretty quickly from the sound of things. But that's not the only zombie news we had this week, and we had news about Zack Snyder. Not Papa Snyder, Zack Snyder. I have to remember to cut that out. Zack Snyder is set to make a zombie film for Netflix titled Army of the Dead. It's of course going to be his return to a zombie world, zombie franchise, because he made his directorial debut in 2004 with Dawn of the Dead. The plot is going to revolve around a man who hires a group of mercenaries to pull off a heist during a zombie apocalypse. Which, I mean, during an apocalypse when the world is presumably going to end, are you really that focused on a heist? Then again, I guess it doesn't have to be a heist for money. It could be something more valuable, like love. Snyder mentioned a few things to the Hollywood Reporter, and I think there's a little bit of sour grapes in these statements. We might look into them in a sec. So he says, there are no handcuffs on me at all in this one. I thought this was a good palate cleanser to really dig in with both hands and make something fun and epic and crazy and bonkers in the best possible way. He went on to say, I love to honour canon and the works of art. Snyder said of his adaptations, which I'm sure made many a Batman and a Superman fan swallow their tongue. But this is the opportunity to find a purely joyful way to express myself through a genre. It will be the most kick-ass, self-aware, but not in a wink to the camera way, balls to the wall zombie freak show that anyone has ever seen. No one's ever let me completely loose like this. So it probably has a few, nudges, kicks to Warner Bros. And the DC stuff that happened. Which, fair enough. I mean, if someone's willing to finance his vision and he can make a decent film out, we'll see. This film that they've been trying to make for a long time, Warner Bros. Had in development since 2007. There was actually some talk at one stage of what was in this movie, and I think it was when another director was planning to direct it, which were quite graphic and disgusting. Anyway, Netflix have reported as well up to 90 million on the budget, so I guess they figured that either way, it's going to get views, and who can argue when it's on Netflix and you can just easily watch it at home. So hopefully it's kind of a return to form to Zack Snyder, because he has had good films and he does do good visuals. So maybe something simplistic like this is a good return to form from. But speaking of DC, a lot of DC news this week. I'm going to start with one segment that probably warrants a whole segment on its own. The Batman news. Batman! Bat news! The Batpod. Oh, Jesus. Batman. No, Batman. Matt Reeves is the Batman, which you've been hearing about forever, because it used to be Ben Affleck's Batman before that. It's now officially set to come out June 25th, 2021, so 2.5 years away. With this, of course, we got the news that Ben Affleck has stepped away from the role, meaning a search for the new Batman has begun. It didn't seem like that long ago that we only just got a Batman. It's happening quick, people. And a lot of conflicting news about this. First of all, Warner Bros. Is not looking for an unknown actor, which Matt Reeves apparently might have wanted, or not ruled out at least. The question of age is also looking unclear. The script seems to feature a young Batman, which is what Matt Reeves wants, but Justin Kroll of Variety tweeted something to suggest that the studio wanted an older actor in their 30s. He also talked a bit about his kind of plan for Batman when he spoke to the Hollywood Reporter, and he said it's very much a point of view driven noir Batman tale. It's told very squarely on his shoulders, and I hope it's going to be a story that will be thrilling but also emotional. It's more Batman in his detective mode than we've seen in the films. The comics have a history of that. He's supposed to be the world's greatest detective, and that's not necessarily been a part of what the movies have been. I'd love this to be one when we go on that journey of tracking down the criminals and trying to solve a crime. I'm going to allow his character to have an arc so that he can go through a transformation. So that sounds like something in line with what we actually heard about this film going back a while. And it also sounds like he has a grip on what Batman should be. But I mean, it also sounds like he's just preaching to the choir, because this is what fanboys have been bitching about for years, that Batman wasn't the kind of a detective or any of that stuff, which, is a reasonable complaint, really. Currently it is titled The Batman, although he did say that is subject to change. I can't imagine that they'd have it called The Batman, even though I think, in that case it actually might be fitting, but don't worry, I'm going to rip into movies of putting the in front of their title soon enough. He stated that there's going to be a rogues gallery, which means there'll probably be more than one villain, which is something we also heard rumoured. Of course, the hot tip is that Josh Gad is going to play the Penguin, which I don't get why people are really excited for the Penguin. He's just a fat guy who's a bit of a gangster. I mean, he's not that interesting, in my opinion. But look, there's obviously a massive rogues gallery of Batman. I'm sure they can cram a few in. He also made sure to emphasise the lack of connectivity between DC films going forward. So it definitely looks like to me that maybe aside from the Harley Quinn movies, DC are basically rebooting without calling it a reboot. They're kind of de-emphasising connectivity. Some characters are disappearing. Some characters are being recast. Your Batmans, your Jokers. But then again, who knows? We'll have to see as it plays out. Other brief bit of Batman news that came out this week was that there was a rumoured Batman Beyond animated cinematic movie set to come in 2022, but that's been debunked. Doesn't seem to be happening anymore. Or ever. It's just a bit of concept art that people went mad for, but maybe given the big reaction to this, we could see it at some point. There is another animated DC movie coming though, because speaking of DC news and more DC news and animated news, loads of stuff came out. DC are really setting course to try prove that they're still in the fight, and you can't argue with that after the success of Aquaman. So we got a lot of little morsels and some big DC news actually this week, to be fair. Firstly is that James Gunn is officially going to script and direct a Suicide Squad movie, now titled The Suicide Squad. Okay, remember, this is what I meant a minute ago when I gave out about putting the in front of it. The Batman kind of makes sense, because people call him the Batman every now and then. And sure, people might say The Suicide Squad, but let's put it this way. By the time this movie comes out, Suicide Squad will only be 5 years old. Can you imagine the confusion? Not that far down the road when it's like, have you seen Suicide Squad? Oh, the one with Margot Robbie? No, the Suicide Squad. Oh, is that the one with Will Smith? No. Like, stop doing that. Like, whatever. Like, of course we have Fast and Furious, The Fast and Furious, and at least those were a good few years apart. And we have Predator and The Predator, which are decades apart. Don't do this. Don't call it the Suicide Squad. It's only 5 years apart. Come up with something. Or I'll just have Will Smith say some sort of The Suicide Squad. Anyway, this kind of seems to put a nail also in the coffin for James Gunn making a return for Guardians 3, which some people were hoping for. I thought there was a chance it could happen, but you know, it gets to a point where it seems very unlikely, and I think 6 months after that incident happened, yeah, it's unlikely that he would return, I guess. There's also rumours about what James Gunn is going to really do with this. Some people have said it's actually very much a Guardians of the Galaxy style movie, and yeah, you know, that might be a little bit disappointing. Obviously I like the Guardians movies, but the fact that he just went, okay, I'm not going to make a Guardians movie, I'm going to make a Suicide Squad movie and make it like a Guardians movie. Of course, there's also the irony that the first Suicide Squad seems to try to copy some of the Guardians of the Galaxy elements. He also was apparently offered his pick of a DC project, including Superman, but had no interest in it. So that's also something that's quite interesting. Anyway, this movie is dated to come out August 6, 2021. As I was talking about another animated DC film. In the same year, the 21st of May, we're going to get an animated Super Pets movie, which is going to be written and directed by Jared Stern and Sam Levine, who worked on the Lego Batman film. So I'm guessing that's going to indicate the sort of tone they're going for, kind of like Teen Titans Go to the Movies, Lego Batman. Comedic take on it, because I don't think, first of all, people didn't know this was animated, I think, initially, so they were like, what the hell? But yeah, DC are clearly trying to make back some ground. They have 3 movies coming out in the summer 2021. They have the Batman, the Suicide Squad, and the Super Pets. I'm sure it's going to have the in front of it like all the rest of them. But anyway, yeah, they're definitely course correcting and lunging forward, I guess. On a separate note, actually, Zazie Beetz mentioned that the Joker movie is being rewritten on the fly. It sounds like they're basically rewriting it the day before they act in it, which is very rarely a good sign. But you know, it's hard to judge me. I said I was really excited for this movie in my preview of the whole year, and I am. But it also still feels like, and I said that at the time as well, that as soon as I see a trailer for this, the mystique and the lore of it will be kind of gone. So I wonder if that's going to affect it. It could go up, could go down, but that's certainly not a good sign. And our final bit of DC news actually comes from Kevin Smith, who apparently, he says, talked to some people on the set of Star Wars 9 who did some of the effects work and heard some of the plans for Zack Snyder's Justice League trilogy, or what the trilogy would have been. And what he says sounds like what we've heard from a lot of fans and speculation, so I question it. I'll bring up another point later that I think might mean this is a bit off. But first of all, he says the first film would have been very close to what we got, but instead Green Lantern would have become involved at the end. So in other words, that scene where he's talking to Alfred in the trailer, where he says something like, "We've been expecting you, hopefully you're not too late," that would have been a Green Lantern. The only other difference in the film would have been that when Steppenwolf is brought back to Apocalypse, we would have seen a glimpse of Darkseid, which is something we had heard rumoured quite a bit before. Secondly, our second film, I should say, would have seen the League take the fight intergalactic and fight Darkseid at his planet in Apocalypse, where they will lose. And the third film would basically be what we saw in Batman v Superman with the Nightmare Batman sequence. It would have been them kind of making a last stand to take back the world from Darkseid. So, a couple of things about this. That scene, he said, where Zack had intended to put a Green Lantern talking to Alfred, that scene is leaked online already, and it has Superman in it. And it doesn't appear to be a reshoot because he doesn't seem to have his face altered with a mustache, so I don't think that's accurate. Unless they filmed another scene, possibly, but who knows. I think the other point is that this is way too much for them to put in one movie. I know it's 3 movies, obviously, but like, they're just having one story arc in all these Justice League movies, and it's just too much. they're kind of putting all their eggs in one basket. Like Darkseid is of course one of the big bads of the DC universe, so to put him straight away as the villain and just build up to him from the beginning, it's like, it actually seems very reminiscent of Avengers with Thanos, but again, that's something that took years to build up to. So I think doing it all at once and saying, hey, here's a Green Lantern, and oh, we're going on to Apocalypse, and oh, we're up in space, it's like, I think you should give it a bit of breathing room. And of course there would have been breaks between films and maybe some solo films in between, but that's a lot. I think maybe it was a question of, you know, running before he could walk. Anyway, let's see if I can link this story up. Okay, so J.K. Simmons, who was in Justice League, just joined the cast of Amazon's animated series Invincible. See what I'm doing? I think I've linked all these stories together so far. I'm so proud of myself. Stephen Yeun has also been cast as the lead of Robert Kirkman's comic adaptation for Amazon. I don't have much to say about this. It's obviously an acclaimed comic, and I think doing it animated is very interesting. But I do want to highlight the cast, because the cast list is absolutely mental. So, Stephen Yeun and J.K. Simmons. Stephen Yeun is playing Invincible. J.K. Simmons is playing his father. I can't remember this comic book. I can't remember his superhero name, but his character is also a superhero. It'll include Sandra Oh, Seth Rogen, Gillian Jacobs, Andrew Reynolds, Zazie Beetz, Mark Hamill, Walton Goggins, Jason Mantzoukas, Mae Whitman, and Chris Diamantopoulos. So that's like a crazy stacked cast. Now again, they're all doing voice work, but that's pretty impressive, you have to say. So it's definitely one to watch out for when it does eventually get released. But that's the only TV news we have. In fact, I have a little roundup here of some of the big TV news we have, because there's quite a lot. So the Television Critics Association press tour is on at the moment, so we'll probably have more news next week. But there's a lot out at the moment. For one, FX have announced that Legion, which airs its third season sometime at the end of this year, it will be its last season, which maybe isn't too surprising. It didn't seem like a show that could run basically, and I don't think the second season was as critically or commercially, I guess, as far as ratings, successful as the first season. I think people kind of drifted off, and maybe it was a case of the Emperor is wearing no clothes. But anyway, it's going to end with the third season, and it sounds like that's what Noah Hawley wants. Well, it sounds like he wants to wrap it up there anyway, so that's pretty good, at least. FX have also ordered Y the Last Man, their adaptation to series. This is something that's been in the works for a long time, not just at FX but all over, and it seems like we're finally going to get an adaptation of Y the Last Man, which is fantastic. It's one of the best graphic novels ever, in my opinion, based on the Brian K. Vaughan Pia Guerrero graphic novel. It's going to air in 2020. They're also changing the name to just Y. I think they figured Y the Last Man was too long, and that from a marketing perspective, Y offered a lot of kind of mystery, and it could be provocative and used for a lot of graphics. So if you're not sure what the plotline is, basically in Y the Last Man, everyone with a Y chromosome, all the men in the world, are killed off by something, and the only one alive is Yorick Brown, who is going to be played by Barry Keoghan in the series. And it's a very interesting, very well done series. So yeah, I'm very excited for that. It seems like it's a long time coming. And finally, well, not finally, actually, I'll squeeze in another tidbit. I haven't this written down, but this is just something I heard earlier. And that's Atlanta Season 3, the Donald Glover series. This is not going to air in time for the Emmys, which is a May deadline this year. But it is being written, it is being worked on, so it'll get there eventually. And now the actual last story I was going to mention is The Stand, the Stephen King's magnum opus TV series, has also been ordered to series. And it's going to be on CBS's Access, their streaming service. It's going to be a 10-episode limited series. That's really all we know at this point. Not much else to go on. Of course, this is probably quite anticipated. I think some people might be a bit dubious the fact that it's on CBS and CBS All Access, but Star Trek Discovery's on it, and that seems to have won a lot of people over. So maybe those fears are ill-founded. Anyway, I think I linked all my Kool-Aid up. That's pretty cool. 8. Anyway, that's our Kool-Aid. So as we always do, we're going to move on to our quick hits. 3 tiny little bits of news, and we're going to mock them, I guess. We're going to mock our betters, as we always do. Thank God. First up, Peter Jackson is set to make a documentary about the Beatles, composed of the 1969 recording session, which led to the album Let It Be. This is being made by Apple and Wingnut Films. Said Jackson in a statement, This is not the first time I've made a film about 4 dudes with bad hair speaking in British accents who are clearly all gay for each other. Fast 9 is set to have a go without The Rock as a co-star. The world left out a large sigh for what was lost, and somewhere Tyrese Gibson and Vin Diesel hugged each other and wiped away their tears now that they brought the franchise back to when it was a boring movie about cars or something. Legendary character actor Dick Miller has died at the age of 90. Possibly best known for his collaborations with Joe Dante and Roger Corman, he appeared in such films as Gremlins 1 and 2, The Terminator, Piranha, Little Shop of Horrors, After Hours, Small Soldiers and The Burbs. He was something of a quintessential kind of, oh, that guy, you know, one of those recognisable faces from plenty of horror and sci-fi films. And for once, no one was happy about burying their dick. I can't let Dick Miller go like that. Dick Miller was absolutely a fantastic actor. I know we normally take the piss in quick hits, but he was he elevated every film he was in, even though he often only had small parts. And what I would say, instead of, you know, sending him out and laugh, I would say, if you wanted to just have a quick idea of Dick Miller, there's a really good clip going around Twitter. I'll retweet it later, where he's on the set of The Burbs and Corey Feldman is kind of goofing off, and it's him and Tom Hanks acting at each other, and Corey Feldman is goofing off on camera, and he just goes, "Just shut the fuck up, kid, we're trying to act," which is amazing. He's, you know, he will be missed. Rest in peace, Dick Miller. Anyway, now that we've said the nice things, let's say something not so nice.
What else could you do with those shoes?
Shut the fuck up, kid. We're trying to do some acting.
He's, you know, he will be missed. Rest in peace, Dick Miller. Anyway, now that we've said the nice things, let's say something not so nice when we talk about trailer trash. And we're beginning first with the non-Super Bowl spots. There were a few Super Bowl spots this week. We'll get to those in a sec. But we're beginning with Birds of Prey. Oh, well, no. Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn, to give it its full title. Oh boy. This was a kind of a short look we got at the movie. I think the main reason we got this is that they're going to be shooting outdoor scenes, and they wanted to kind of get ahead of the narrative with the look of the movie. I have to say I did not like this teaser at all. Now I do think it might be a case where we're just getting a kind of camera test or costume test, the same they put out for the Joker. But yeah, just the tone of this and the look of it looked awful and cheap. It looked really like that, what was that movie a couple of years ago, Gem and the Holograms? It looked kind of like that. So I don't know. We got, of course, our first look at Harley Quinn. Her new look is kind of got a glam chic look, and she's had loads of different outfits since. I think it's a really bland, boring look. It doesn't really scream Harley Quinn. It's just a girl with pale hair, I guess, or pale skin. And look, I just to clarify, I understand that they're trying to make her a bit more visually distinct from the Joker, because obviously this is symbolizing her independence and her escape from the Joker character, but still a very, very uninteresting look. And I think one of the things that Suicide Squad did get right was Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn and the look of Harley Quinn. So it's kind of a shame. I think they're going for a very more grounded, realistic look, and I don't think Harley Quinn is that type of character. So we also got our first look at Mary Elizabeth Winstead as the Huntress. I love Mary Elizabeth Winstead, but this is a very basic look. Just it's like a leather jacket and a crossbow. And look, they could be saving some of this stuff for later on in the movie. They just don't want to give it away in a short teaser. We did get a look at Black Canary, and I did really like this look actually. She has a real kind of wilder look, especially compared to what Black Canary normally looks like. And I think it works. Played by Journey Smollett Bell. We also got a look at Renee Montoya, Cassandra Cain, Zaz, whose look I mocked a couple of weeks back because we got a look at him at the Golden Globes, the actor playing him, and yeah, he just looks like the actor. Silver hair. I mean, again, they're not going to give everything away in such a tiny teaser, but then again, we got a look at Black Mask. He's not wearing a black mask. It's just Hugh McGregor. Yeah, look, there's not a lot to go on this trailer. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. It's not a movie I'm terribly excited for anyway, but this teaser didn't really sell me. In fact, it probably drove my interest away, but I'm sure by the time we get some more official looks, maybe that'll change. It doesn't come out until February next year, so we got a good year. Then we have another trailer, and I guess this is actually the perfect transition to when we're talking about Super Bowl, because this had a trailer and a Super Bowl trailer. and that is the awfully titled. I'm really going after movie titles this episode so far, but I think it's awful anyway. Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw. It sounds like a like a comedic spin-off, which I guess it is. So you got me there, but just Hobbs and Shaw, we get it. Okay, like it's very unmistakably a Fast and Furious movie. You see anybody. Anyway, this is like the dumbest, stupidest, like best looking, most amazing film. I cannot wait to see. It's so ridiculous, and it's amazing. Idris Elba is basically a superhero now. He's genetically modified bad guy. He even calls himself the bad guy, and the dialogue is absolutely awful. It's so cliche. Like, this is a 2-minute trailer, and I just counted off a few of the cliches. I probably lost count, but this is just some of the dialogue. He's a ghost. It doesn't play well with hooks. You want to open a can of whoop ass on him, or the amazing part where Jason Statham beats a guy with a champagne and says, "Something with champagne, bro."
You're gonna need to operate outside the system. Deckard Shaw.
It's amazing. It really reminds you, like, what's that Rick and Morty thing with the two brothers in a van?
Former MI6 agent.
It's
doesn't play well
like a
with
parody of action
If we
movies.
stand a chance
It's
against
so over the top.
Brixton,
It's awesome.
you guys
Idris
have
Elba
to
was
work
running around with a
together.
flamethrower. The dynamic between Jason Statham and The Rock looks really funny and stupid. And I think it could really work. It's like absolutely one of the worst films. I cannot wait to see and watch over and over again. It looks like it's going to be a lot. It's coming out in August. David Leitch directed it. He also did the first John Wick, Tom Blonde, Deadpool 2, so he kind of knows acting. I think this is probably a step up in the ridiculous scale, but he probably is having fun with it, and that's exactly what people expect, I think. So yeah, it's kind of crazy enough to work, I think. They put out this trailer on Friday, and then they put out a Super Bowl trailer on Sunday. Super Bowl trailer is just an edited version, basically advertising the trailer, so that was kind of pointless to do that, really. Like, the Super Bowl trailer is, don't watch it, like, it's just an edited version of some of the good stuff taken out. Advertising trailer. Which does bring us to the Super Bowl trailers, and yeah, they're like, this is definitely a lesser year. You know, it's not just Super Bowl trailers, but the Super Bowl in general. Most people aren't that impressed with it, or even most of the ads. I mean, if there was any ads pointed out, there was a few ads that aren't movie related. I wouldn't want to mention these, but just in passing, Bud Light had a Game of Thrones crossover where, what's it, the mountain crushes a Bud Light night. I think is their mascot. Walmart had now with their famous movie vehicles. Make of those what you will. Anyway, the actual TV spots. Another one that had a little bit of footage before the TV spot was Toy Story 4, and it just basically confirmed Bo Peep. Bo Peep's in the TV spot, or the Super Bowl spot, I should say, as well. I have to say, I'm really not into the way Disney is marketing this movie so far. And that's not because I think the film's bad, it's just they keep putting out these little slivers of clips, and it's like some of these I don't even think they're in the movie. I think it's just like basically saying, hey, Toy Story 4 is coming out. This person is in it. Ooh, look at this situation.
This place is amazing.
Wasn't Buzz
It's like just a
gonna be
little
this
short,
year?
and
He must be held up
really
somewhere.
enjoying them, I must say, but I'm still excited for the film. The Super Bowl spot had
If you
Buzz
think you can take our
tied
top
up as a prize at a
spots,
carnival.
you're wrong. Dead wrong.
Which made me kind of question, like, this is a toy that's 25 years old now.
How you like that, cheetah?
People really like.
To infinity
People really want an unopened 25-year-old toy as an action figure. I mean, if this was like any other toy universe, presumably there'd be more up-to-date Buzz Lightyear toys, which is something I'm sure Pixar could make a story out of. Buzz Lightyear going through a midlife crisis. Anyway, we have Keegan-Michael Key and Jordan Peele's stuff, kind of carnival animals, kind of keeping them and teasing him. There wasn't much in this. Bo Peep is probably the main talking point. She hasn't been seen since Toy Story 2, so it's like 20 years later. And she's, of course, meeting up with Woody again. She has a completely new look, which I don't know if they're going to explain in the movie or just say, hey, this is how she looks now. I'm not sure if it's going to be addressed. The director said that she's taking control of her own destiny, whatever that means. And yeah, that's all we have to go on Toy Story 4. Again, I really hope we just get a proper trailer, because these little snippets and these little clips are kind of just getting irritating and grating. I don't think I'll even watch another one if it comes out, to be honest, until we get a full trailer. Like I said, I think overall the movie spots this Super Bowl are a bit of a letdown, but we'll continue on. We have Us, also from Jordan Peele, and it was a good trailer, but I think if you've seen the first trailer, it's not really necessary. Most of the same unsettling imagery. There's not really any real revelations. It's just continued creepiness and that kind of thing. And it looked great. Of course it does. The first trailer looked great, and I don't think this movie sold me or turned me off the movie either way. I think it was just... Now, I think the good thing is that they must be keeping things under wraps, and that's why it's so much of the same footage. Although at the same time, if they were going to keep it under wraps, maybe they could have kept that twist out of the trailer. Like, us is the family or whatever. Then again, I get maybe there's not. It's probably very hard to market the movie that way. But and one of two Marvel spots, we had Captain Marvel. So again, not much to say about this. This film is coming out so soon that I'm not going to talk about any more trailers or footage. There's no point.
You ready?
Because there's a little bit of repeat footage in this. There's a lot of cool stuff in this as well, but it's really doubling down on the tagline of higher, further, faster, which took its name from the Television comic run in comics, and there's been taglines on the posters as well. It's very exciting. We see Captain Marvel kind of fighting ships, fighting an alien ship, and I think one of the prototype twin jets or whatever.
Try to keep up.
They put out a TV spot not last week, but a couple of days before the Super Bowl as well, which might be worthy of mention for one reason, and that is that the character of Monica Rambeau, who is the character of what's his name? I'm going to say Lachelle Lynch, but I can't remember if that's actually her name. She's playing Maria Rambeau, so that's like Captain Marvel's friend in the Air Force. Monica Rambeau was a kid in this movie, and of course this movie is a prequel, and by the time it gets to the modern day she would be grown up. And in the comics, Monica Rambeau becomes, well, a number of characters. At one point she was Captain Marvel. She's been Pulsar, but most recently she's been Spectrum, and actually had quite a hand in the Avengers, so possibly could be setting up the seed for Spectrum or any number of the characters Monica Rambeau has played in a future film. But who knows? I think there's got to be some reason to include it, right? Or maybe it'll be Young Avengers or something along those lines. Last one, of course, the big one, the other Marvel spot, is Avengers Endgame. So again, I think this is one that wasn't really necessary, but I guess it was somewhat expected. I will say that I like how little we're getting out of this movie. I think that's what makes this spot a bit underwhelming. So it's a good thing in the long run, because it does feel like we're getting footage from very early on in the movie. Like a lot of these superhero comic book movies, it's got a very dreary look about it, very depressing. You know, we see all these boats that are washed up on shore, presumably because these people that were out at sea got dusted. And you know, we see football stadiums, grass on things. Basically, the world is just done. It seems like people are just giving up, and it's good. It's nice and dark in that sense. We see Captain America in a sort of a support group trying to cope with loss, which remind me of the Winter Soldier where he meets Falcon. I don't know, will that be a factor? Would it be a callback or what? I also saw people point out that he looks quite angry, as if maybe people are confronting him and blaming the Avengers. So that could be a case, who knows. Tony Stark and Nebula, we see them working on something, possibly to escape from space. Who knows? And we see a shot of Thor that looks a lot like where we saw Thanos at the end of Infinity War. So maybe he's going after Thanos, maybe he's up for revenge, we don't know. And final, probably, we kind of get a bit of a team lineup towards the end of the trailer. We also see what we're assuming is Captain America becomes S.H.I.E.L.D. Of course, at the end of Civil War, Tony told him something along the lines of, you know, my father made that shield, you're not worthy of it. So I'm assuming that we're going to have a moment where he says you deserve it or something along those lines. One thing that a lot of people have pointed out, and I think there's a lot to argue about this. I think this could definitely be true. Marvel are known for tinkering with their trailers a bit, editing out characters, that kind of thing, to preserve some secrets. Of course, we had Hulk in the trailer for Infinity War, and there wasn't really much Hulk in it. We had, in Avengers Age of Ultron, characters that were in that scene were edited out. Spider-Man was edited out of Civil War's trailer, for example. There's a few shots in this trailer where, from a framing perspective, it looks like a character should be standing there. Like there's a point where they're all looking up. So maybe it could be Captain Marvel. Could be Iron Man. We don't know. But I do think there's definitely characters removed from this, which means they're doing a good job of trying to preserve the secrets of this movie, which you have to be grateful for in the long run. just a bit of trailer news, I guess. This Friday we're getting a trailer for the Child's Play remake, so keep an eye out for that. I'll of course talk about it next week when it drops. But yeah, that's our trailer trash, and after the trailer trash, of course, as we always talk about, we talk about the box office. But I really don't want to talk about this week because it's so damn boring. The box office this week is like the most boring that has maybe ever been. As I said last week, I said it stubbornly refused to change. This week it's more or less the same. Glass is number 1. The Upside is number 2. We have our new release, Miss Bala, which is some action movie that people don't really care about. Number 3, Aquaman. 4, Spider-Verse. 5. I mean, Aquaman and Spider-Verse have been in the top 5 for 8 weeks. 8 weeks and 7 weeks each. Now, like, how... It's just kind of irritating. It feels like I've been talking about the same movies at the box office every episode, and I really have in some cases. So this is Glass's 3rd week now at number 1. Made 9.5 million, 49.5% drop. Yeah, look, I'm not gonna dwell on this anymore. This is the worst weekend in a while. It's the top 12 releases only grossed 55.4 million, which is the lowest grossing in about a year and a half. I think September 2017. You'd have to go back that far to find a lower gross. It's actually the worst Super Bowl weekend at the box office since the year 2000. So yeah, very dreary. So last week I didn't do a hack headline, which is something we started the week before because it was just there was monotonous, nothing to say. My hack headline for this week: if the box office doesn't change, I'm going to smash a glass upside my head. Because I'm so bored of looking at these movies. Mix it up a little bit. And the good news is, coming up this week, we will have some new releases, which brings us to our weekly watch. And we have a few movies coming out domestically, a few internationally, a few TV shows, a few Netflixes. Moving on. So, domestically, and when I say domestically, it's also in most territories. Lego Movie 2, the second part, will be released on Friday, the 8th. Reviews for this have come out. They're obviously not as good as the first film, but it seems to have been a positive word of mouth overall, so that's quite good. And yeah, it definitely sounds like it's worth a watch. I think I will see it eventually. I'm not sure if I'm going to watch it and review for the show. I haven't really decided yet. What Men Want, the gender swapped remake that's loosely based on the 2000 movie with Mel Gibson, because Mel Gibson knows what women want. Listen to those leaked audio tapes. Tajari P. Henson, I keep butchering names. But even, like, this isn't a question of me stumbling or me not reading the name. I don't know how to pronounce that name. Tajari P. Henson. Tajiri? No, it's a wrestler. Tajari P. Henson. I'm sticking with it. Is going to star in this movie. Has actually a quite good cast as far as an ensemble cast, so this could play well. Maybe for the rom-com crowd. Then we have... this is a movie that completely took me by surprise. The Man Who Killed Hitler, and Then the Bigfoot. So you see that name, and you immediately assume it's like a B movie, and I assumed it was. I heard about this trailer ages ago, but I saw it was coming out this week, so I said, hey, I'll check it out, because the reviews for it are actually really positive, and it looks good. Like, the actual look of the film, aesthetically, it looks good. It doesn't look cheap. It's there Sam Elliott, and I would recommend you watch the trailer. It doesn't seem like a self-aware, stupid B movie. Like, plays it straight. The guy who actually killed Hitler is going to hunt down Bigfoot. It looks well shot as well. So yeah, I think look at the trailer for that one. It seems interesting, and the reviews have been quite good. So I don't think it's going to do well at the box office because there's a lot of competition and stuff. But definitely one to check out maybe down the road. Also domestically, we have Cold Pursuit, a Liam Neeson based transport movie. Normally those are dumped in January because they suck, but this one seems to be a bit better. The plot is a snowplow driver seeks revenge against the drug dealers he thinks killed his son. It's a remake of a Norwegian movie. And yeah, the reviews of this have been quite good. It's kind of a bit comedic as well, so I think that gives it the edge. Liam Neeson's getting roasted online as we speak because of some comments he made. Internationally, this week we have Alita Battle Angels, not out in America till Friday week, I don't think, but it's out from Wednesday, in Ireland at least. I'm thinking of seeing this. This is actually strange. I know I made some comments in the first episode about this movie. Let me just give a quick recap. And I said it was going to be a huge flop. It doesn't look great. Yada yada yada. Then there were some early reactions, and I said, okay, I'll eat my words. Maybe it is a bit better. But I warned, don't always trust early trailer reactions. And it looks like, we shouldn't trust early Twitter reactions because the reviews are out now and they're definitely mixed to negative, I think. Apparently it's good to see in 3D, so I don't know. If I get bored, I might see it. I might review it next week. We'll see. Haven't fully decided yet. Haven't dedicated yet, which I think is most people's reacting to this movie. They're like, yeah, I might see it a bit. I might see it. On television, we have a few things starting up. We have Pen 15. Just think about that one, what it's called. It's starting on Hulu. It's a comedy. It's produced by Lonely Island. Haven't seen any reviews for this yet, so I'm not entirely sure. Over on Netflix, we have Big Mouth is getting a Valentine's Day special. That's going to air Friday the 8th. Also, actually, in brief Netflix news, the Ted Bundy movie we talked about last week, Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil and Vile, has been purchased by Netflix. It's going to air sometime in autumn. Looks like they're going to try to get an awards push for Zac Efron too, which isn't surprising considering he seems to be the one thing that nearly everyone walked away with a positive impression of. Also coming out this week on Netflix, we have High Flying Bird, Steven Soderbergh's latest. Steven Soderbergh, who's been retiring now for about a decade and a half. He has a basketball sports drama coming to Netflix, starring Andre Holland, who was in Moonlight, and Zazie Beetz. God, Zazie Beetz is getting a lot of mentions around the place in this episode. Maybe she can replace her Kevin Hart in the Oscar segment. Because definitely this Kevin Hart segment is running out. Although we are going to mention Kevin Hart now when we talk about Kevin Hart's Guide to Black History, which is also going up on Netflix, where he tells the unsung heroes of the black community in a comedic special. This is going to have a few guest stars in it as well, so it could be quite entertaining. We have remastered The Two Killings of Sam Cooke. This is a series that I totally forgot about that even existed. The remastered series. It's basically like, you know, the way ESPN does 30 for 30s on sport. It seems like it's one of those things, but with music. I haven't actually looked into reviews for it, but they've done quite a few of them, so might be worth checking out. And finally, The Patriot Act with Hassan Minhaj, another name I probably mispronounced, is going to begin its second season this Sunday on the 10th. So, you know, it's quite a well-regarded show overall. There was a lot of talk because of, I think it was an episode removed about Iran, which seemed like more publicity stunt than anything. But there you go, that's our weekly watch, and without further ado, we're going to talk about a topic this week. So, we talked a little bit a few weeks ago about EA and Star Wars and how EA weren't as interested in developing other people's properties when they could develop their own. So that's something that was in my mind when we talked about this. And I feel like, in general, it's been in my head for a while that movie licensed games kind of disappeared. So I wanted to explore that. So here's our topic this week. We're talking about movie-based video games. It used to be a common occurrence for blockbusters. A movie comes out and a video game will coincide with the release. Harry Potter, Spider-Man, Lord of the Rings are all examples of huge global franchises that had successful video game releases inspired by the movies. They were not only critically acclaimed at times, but also sold incredibly well. It of course makes perfect sense. A successful movie can sell a video game regardless of its quality in some cases. However, in recent years this trend has seemingly died down. In fact, all the franchises mentioned, despite having had releases in at least the last 5 years, have not had a video game tie-in. So what happened? That something seemingly so lucrative and constant stopped. I'm not sure at what point the slowdown of video games based on movies became clear to most people, but to me the first time I noticed was a little over a decade ago, in 2008. When you look at the biggest films of 2008, only 4 films didn't have a direct tie-in, although Indiana Jones did have a Lego adaptation of the original movies to coincide with the release of Crystal Skull. So when you take that into account, only 3 didn't have a video game adaptation. Mamma Mia, Hancock, and the most successful and surprising, The Dark Knight. In fact, that was the point when I noticed that video game tie-ins seemed to be on the decrease, at least when it came to non-kids films. The Batman case is an interesting one, because they tried really hard to make one. It made sense to, for one. The Dark Knight was a behemoth, both critically, commercially, and a rare instance where a huge event film lived up to the hype. Take into account that the previous film had a video game, and it was being handled by EA, and it seemed like a slam dunk. However, the Dark Knight video game, which was never officially announced, was mishandled to the point that it had become something of an apocryphal tale when we talk about this topic, with its potential for greatness and trying perhaps somewhat exaggerated. I do feel though that it gave people a new outlook on the need for a game to promote the movie. The Dark Knight game was plagued with technical issues, especially when they tried changing the engine of the game. The now defunct Pandemic Games, who would later be a subsidiary of EA, were tasked with making it. One branch of the studio, in LA, were working on a new game engine, which would later be used for the Saboteur. and when the branch working on Batman in Australia saw this, they felt a better engine geared towards an open world would suit Nolan's The Dark Knight. However, porting it over caused lots of issues, which were unforeseen, including a horrendous frame rate issue causing the game to drop to 5 frame rates a second. This would only get worse to the point of crashing the development kit. The strengths of this new engine, called Odin, had been somewhat exaggerated, and realising the sheer amount of work to fix it, some Pandemic staffers quit, and Elevation partners who own Pandemic sold them to EA. These issues alone made a release in time for the movie's cinematic date impossible. It's something that many film games suffer from, the deadline. You see, the production schedule for games can be quite lengthy, and making a date can be almost impossible, because of how much work and issues can arise during production. This is why it's common that games become delayed before release, as problems arise and so much can change over a long production cycle. Movies rarely give the games a break. The date for a movie is normally set in stone, and the game needs to be on the shelves at the release date to capitalise on it, not just from a revenue standpoint, but also as a marketing tool. You should also take into account that at times the details of a movie wouldn't be made known to the game developers immediately. In the case of The Dark Knight, Pandemic did not have promotion materials for the game when they began their work. I can only imagine that in this day and age, the level of secrecy from much of the blockbuster landscape makes the access developers would have even more limited. So because of that, video game tie-ins can be rushed. Really rushed. There's a reason many of them are quite bad, is because it's a tight schedule and there's little room for error. And this is going to become important when we talk about this later on. With regards to the Dark Knight game, this problem pushed the game back and made a release in time for its cinematic run impossible. It was instead pushed to December, when it would be released on home video, and was also the point where EA would lose access to the rights of Batman. Even this only gave the game an extra few months. Another issue was that, as stated earlier, the game was never officially announced. But as the actors were reprising their roles from the movie, Gary Oldman let it slip that the game was in development, putting even more expectation and pressure on Pandemic to release the game. Despite all this, the game was never released, and shortly after Pandemic's Australia shut down, and after the LA office finished the saboteur, the developer closed down completely. It is estimated that in light of this debacle, EA lost a potential $100 million in revenue, and that doesn't take into account the money they spent on such a lengthy development. So you might ask, why did I bring up Batman? A game that was never released, and for which a lot of the poor choices could be chalked up to some poor management choices. Well, for a few reasons. Firstly, it's become a cautionary tale of developing games based on movies. Around this time was when movie tie-ins for the PS3 and Xbox 360 generation of consoles would have started taking off. However, instead they began to disappear. Developers quickly realised that as the quality of the games improved and technology got more advanced, that it was far more time consuming and expensive to make a game that would release in time for a major motion picture. During the era of the PS2 and certain previous eras, it would be quite simpler to put a game together, and when it comes to graphics and game engine, less was expected from this era from a technical perspective. This is not to dismiss the quality of those games from before, not at all, but more so that making a game on such a short schedule would have been easier on a more primitive game system, which is something we'll address later. The standard is much higher for what was expected. A major issue for Pandemic was the lighting engine, something that in past generations of gaming would have been less noticeable than expected. Needless to say, this is all incredibly expensive, and when you consider the amount of staff needed to get a game out on time, then it only adds to the cost. For example, in the hopes of finishing the game, EA expanded the development team to over 100 people, which is massive and of course expensive. Secondly, why The Dark Knight is an interesting case is because of what happens to the Batman video game property next. The following year, after the rights reverted back to Warner Bros. Interactive, they released Batman Arkham Asylum. The game was critically adored and launched a series of successful games, comics and other media. And what's also interesting is the sales of the game seemingly match what a Dark Knight game would have hit, which is something I feel is worthy of mention, and why I feel a Dark Knight game could be critical to discussion of the death of video game tie-ins. When you see a costly venture fail to produce any results, and meanwhile, with your own property, you could subsequently create a massive hit and launch a franchise in its own right, then is there really a need to rush a game for the sake of a cash grab? Especially when a giant like EA and a property as valuable as Batman can fall apart like the Dark Knight game did. I think many studios saw the success that Warner had with the Arkham series and realised that a property can succeed without the need for it to be coinciding with the film. A few months ago, we had Spider-Man on PS4, which has sold nearly 10 million units. This is 2.5 times the amount of sales analysts predicted Dark Knight game would have done. In fact, USA Today has concluded the first 3 days of sales for the Spider-Man video game would have beaten the sales of tickets on the opening weekend to the latest movie, Spider-Man Homecoming. This was also the first Spider-Man game published since the rights reverted back to Sony. So in this case, is it any surprise that the studios are holding on to their IP and giving a game time to be of decent quality when gamers can have both higher expectations and are willing to buy it regardless of its connection to a Hollywood blockbuster? Yet it also speaks to the modern gaming landscape. Buying a license for a series is expensive, and when you're working against the clock to capitalise on a game with the expectation that the movie is going to be a hit, there's a lot of risk involved. John Blackburn of Avalanche Software, who made many Disney games, told Wired the dangers of movie tie-ins. Because of the way these contracts work, it's more expensive to make those games. So a lot of the time, the development budgets go down because of that. It becomes a vicious cycle. Lower development budget means a less satisfying game, so consumers purchase fewer copies. So sales drop. So budgets drop even lower for the next batch of licensed games, which play even worse. And of course, when a studio is expecting game after game with their hit franchise, that becomes a problem. It's no surprise then that more and more movie studios are holding on to their properties to either adapt themselves or to develop in isolation of a cinematic tie-in. On the other hand, video game giants are deciding to invest in their own IPs so that they can give the title the time it deserves, in the hopes that doing so will launch a successful franchise they 100% own. This is something we talked about a few weeks ago with EA and Star Wars, in that they are perhaps less interested in developing other people's properties, when they can put the time and money towards creating or developing their own. In fact, EA put out a large chunk of these movie tie-ins. Harry Potter, James Bond, Lord of the Rings, Batman, Simpsons, The Godfather were all EA titles at one point. EA's former president, Frank Gibu, even stated in the 2010s when referring to Bond and movie games in general, "We dumped that license because we felt like we needed to own more intellectual property. And we don't like where James Bond is going with all the creative limitations on it. The percentage royalties you have to pay the licensors are going the wrong way for publishers. The margins are being squeezed. And to top it all off, the movie game business is falling apart. Considering the total amount of money we have to spend on all these types of James Bond games and the total amount of man hours we had to put into them, we thought, hell, let's work on our own IP. The guys who made James Bond games for us, well yeah, they went on and made Dead Space." It's hard to argue with, he's not wrong. In fact, if we look at the ill-fated Brash Entertainment, who were formed solely to make licensed video games, but quickly shuttered after poor sales and quality without releasing any games of note, despite holding licenses that may have even included DC Comics, it seemed that the movie game bubble burst. Even big licenses clearly don't mean good games or results. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is the highest grossing film franchise of all time, but it hasn't had a console game released since the first Captain America movie in 2011, unless you include a Lego game, and they were all middling in sales and reception. Despite having a game to coincide with Avengers in 2012, that game was also cancelled, after THQ experienced financial issues, and that was despite rumours that it was actually quite a good game. And now they've announced an Avengers game being developed by Square Enix. That's been in development for at least 2 years, and we don't even know much else about it, which could serve as another possible reminder of the risk involved with making a licensed game, and the greater potential in allowing the developers to make a game inspired by the franchise in their own time. The truth is that in general, licensed games are becoming a bit more rare, as developers have more faith in a game selling on its own merits than having to be boosted by knowledge of an IP. There's actually been something of a shift. It used to be more case that video games looked to profit off film, but this has swapped around somewhat, especially when you look at the high volume of video game movies in development. It's almost working in reverse, where a successful original video game IP can now inspire a big Hollywood movie, rather than the other way around. Gaming has become such a big industry that now rights to the movie versions are bought in advance of the game's release. In the early 2000s, consumers were less aware of big video game franchises than they are now, so a movie licensed game seemed like a safe bet. However, in a boom in gaming quality and awareness, that has changed. It's also the fact that movies are more plot driven, and normally a single player campaign without online in a video game is rare, unless it's a huge AAA title. So if there was still tie-ins, an online mode will be necessary, which is even more expensive and quite a risk to take. Movie studios, or the entertainment industry in general, simply didn't care about games, or see them as important. They were seen as something lesser. The game was seen as simply another way of marketing the film. Okay, I can't keep up the charade. I've been lying to you. The truth is that video game tie-ins aren't dead. They've just been moved. We talk about why on consoles the bottom fell out of the tie-in because of the cost, expectation of high quality brought about by improvement of tech, and the potential risk involved. Well, there's one avenue where those factors aren't really an issue. Mobile games. First of all, we should realise that one sector of movies that still often have video game tie-ins, although less than before certainly, are children's movies, particularly animated ones. Still from time to time they have video game adaptations. For a few reasons. Firstly, children are a lot less critical of the quality of a game graphically or from a gameplay perspective. And also the graphics can thrive on being less realistic, as it's often an animated property or a cartoon. This is one reason why there is a lot of those Lego adaptations of movies in conjunction with a movie, as there is a tried and tested formula with the Lego games. The graphics don't need to be stellar, and they often adapt previous films, which avoids the need to rush or incorporate the film that has just been released. Mobile game graphics are even less of a priority, and to a younger, more casual audience like children, or people who don't consider themselves gamers, the content or quality is less important than ever. However, another potential important point is the amount of revenue. If you look at the highest grossing games of each year in recent memory, predominantly it is dominated by massive online multiplayer games, free-to-play games, and mobile games with in-app purchases. For example, Pokemon Go, which many believe has passed its point of relevancy, made $1.3 billion in revenue in 2018, more than the previous year even. Marvel, Star Wars, Fast and Furious, The Hunger Games, and Transformers, they've all had games on mobile platforms in recent years. And that's only from looking at one studio that develops mobile games. In essence, with mobile games there's a lot less expectation for an amazing game. Some games are just reskinned standard games from previous eras, while others do something more original, and as the movie comes out they give it a new skin to promote its release. Yet because it's free, aside from purchases in the game, downloads are high, the production costs low, and it only takes a small percentage of the player base to create a huge profit. More importantly, it's cheap to make, and more people are willing to try it because of the low price point. Social media games have also taken in some of the refugees from the era of licensed video games. So I guess saying video game tie-ins are gone is a bit dramatic. In an age where IP is everything, game studios and movie studios want more control over what they own, so they can put the effort into making a better and more profitable video game. Whether in the case of video game developers, that means launching and finding a new franchise, or for the film studios, it means making a video game where you have more time and more control over the finished product that can stand separate to your entertainment franchise. From a consumer perspective, it's a good thing. This has been somewhat ushered in by a more knowledgeable and aware gamer, people who are now more aware than ever of a big video game franchise. It's less niche than before, and modern gamers expect a higher standard of quality in gameplay and visually, especially on more powerful and complex consoles than prior generations. However, the continued presence of simpler and easier to access games from mobile means that for the studio, that source of revenue is still there, and in some cases even larger than before. From a development perspective, the quality expected is far lower, the player base far larger, with the profit potential higher than ever. So maybe it's not fair to say that the movie video game tie-in has died. However, it has evolved, or maybe even devolved, to the point where the license's day and date release is a rarity, and it's a good thing, as we may now experience better quality original games based on licenses, without the rush to meet the day, while game developers focus more and more on new franchises. In reality, the decline of the tie-in might be, in the long run, a benefit to both movie studios and video game developers, but more importantly, the gamers and cinephiles looking for better quality and more originality in both mediums. Well, that is the show this week, so hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, just give us a like, a share, positive review on iTunes as well would be great. Aside from that, if you want to get in touch with the show, you can get us on Instagram, popcultpod, all one word. You can contact me on Twitter, pop_cult_pod. Where else can you get me? Gmail, popcultpod@gmail.com. And we're also on Facebook, Popcult Compound, if you, for some reason, want to check us out there. But hope you enjoyed the show. Next week we have at least one review. It'll probably be Alita or Lego Movie. Depending on how much I have to say in it, I might also squeeze in a development hell feature on Akira. So lots of stuff coming up. So